Alright, moving on to our next Patreon request, and this one comes from Luke Morehouse, who asked me to do a Blade Hellboy crossover. As always, if you guys would like to have a Patreon request done, just hit the link in the description box below, head on over to my Patreon, hit the third tier, that'll allow you access to do so. But other than that, let's get started with the video. The story begins with Hellboy going to Central Europe, and he's already like, oh god, every time something bad happens, it's always Central Europe. It is always, like, Central Europe is where all the weird, like, the really nasty shit happens. And he's like, asking, because he's on a helicopter, he's like on a plane that's dropping him off, courtesy of the BPRD, and he's like, hey, remind me where I'm going again? And they're like, you're going to the Carpathians. So he's like, oh, God, the Carpathians, again. Nothing ever good comes from, nothing ever good comes from there. Did we all just forget Vlad Tepes, whatever. So, more or less, there's been a rash of increase of vampire activity, but not in the way you think. Basically, there's been a lot of vampires gathering in this specific area in the Carpathians. So, they are, like, eating people, but it's almost like they're coming together for a convention, almost. And they are all gathering, like all these different vampires and species of vampires are all gathering together in order for something. Like they're all gathering in the Carpathian Mountains for something. And it's normally that these different species of vampires, like from Mexico to the Philippines to Russia to Ireland, all these different vampires of different mythologies are coming together in like almost like an act of peace. So of course the BPRD are like, nah, that's not happening. So they drop Hellboy off in the woods and give him a general direction of where they're all kind of gathering. So as Hellboy's like walking along, following the clues, he hears like something following him, and he's like, damn, I thought I'd have a little more time and probably have it like maybe just to catch a quick nap before I went further, but whips out his gun, just starts firing, and out of the trees comes Blade with swords drawn, and he's like, oh shit. So Blade and Hellboy get into the classic comic book fight. The two of them do battle, and during the fight, Blade's like, I know who you are, Hellboy, and I don't want you here. This is my fight. You go home to the BPRD. And Hellboy's like, we tried to recruit you, dude. And he's like, yeah, I don't do, like, I've been on enough teams to know and enough organizations to know I work better alone. He's like, no complaints here, pal, but, unlike you, I'm on official business. So I'm going to need you to fuck off. So as they so him and Blade keep fighting, until, like, a swarm of vampires show up. And they're like, isn't this lovely? We all kind of figured, like, all of us coming together, we kind of figured that, the Daywalker would show up. We all kind of suspected that that you, Blade, would appear. But to have Hellboy here, too, the Anunung Rama himself, this is a most beautiful, blessed night. And Blade and Hellboy look at each other and be like, truce? Hell yeah. So the vampires all swarm them. Blade and Hellboy do what they do best and proceed to just fucking annihilate these vampires. But they do leave one alive and are like, they pin him to a tree and are like, spill it, Scrawny. What's going on? Like, what is the deal with you guys? And the vampire's like, you can't make me talk. I'm not going to talk. And that's when Blade is like, if he ain't going to talk, I'm just going to kill him. And Hellboy's like, nah, give me a second. Let me do something real fast. That something is he pulls out like a rosary of garlic. And he's like, holy garlic rosary. 2 things vampires hate in one. So he starts like holding it around him, and the vampire's just going nuts. And eventually the vampire like caves and is like, look, I'll tell you about the gods of blood. And they're like, gods of blood? That's new. So the vampire explains, like, how like there's this theory that humanity brought God into existence through their belief and all of that. And they're like, yeah. Well, the same could be, like, gods are formed from belief of people. Like, gods are created through that. So vampires are people in their own right, and through our beliefs, we created our own gods. When vampires first existed, we first created our own religion to to spit in the face of God. Like, that was our whole thing, was to build this brand new religion after the days of Atlantis, where we were driven out. And essentially, we made our own pantheon of gods to, in the face, to make our own gods, and we lost them over the centuries. Even though a lot of us are immortal, not every, all the Atlantean vampires died one way or another. So we forgot about them. But there's a new person called the Blood Priest, and he has found a way to resurrect the blood gods. And it's with our belief we can bring the old blood gods back. And to which Hellboy and Blade are like, yeah, we're not he's like, where's this being held? And he's like, I'll never talk. Rosary. Oh, fuck, okay. So Vampire tells them where it's being held. Blade and Hellboy head off in that direction. As they talk, as they're headed that way, they kind of have a conversation between the two of them where they're like, BPRD's got a notebook on you. They're talking about you're the Daywalker, professional vampire hunter, all that. But they also said you were made through different ways. It's like, yeah, my mom was bitten by a vampire named Deacon Frost. His his vampirism went into me before I was born. Yeah, and he's like, yeah, I know a thing about trust me, you ain't the only one with a unique birth, pal. My mom was a witch who fucked a demon lord during Walpurgisnacht. So trust me, I know how births. I know my history. And he's like, all right. So let's talk. Blade's like, whatever. So eventually they do find this ancient this ancient temple in the side of one of the mountains, and Hellboy, of course, is being cheeky. Is like, you think that's the place? So Blade and Hellboy, they get in, kill some vampires in order to get in, and proceed to fight their way into the building. But eventually they do get overwhelmed by vampires, and they're brought before the Blood Priest, who turns out to be Radu, who is the brother of Dracula. He is the traitor brother of Dracula. And essentially what he's been doing is he's been creating a new religion. He's been trying to find a way to bring the blood gods back, and basically be like the true son that his brother Vlad could never be to the Holy Order of the Dragon. However, he's like, yeah, we believe a blood sacrifice of a Daywalker would probably bring finally reawaken the ancient blood gods. And Hellboy's just kind of laughing like, what's funny about you guys? And they're like, what? What could be so funny, Anunung Rama? We could kill you, but we risk, going to war with hell itself. But and our gods aren't ready for that. So they could. However, that doesn't mean we aren't going to let them feast on you, Anunung Rama. And he's like, yeah, but getting back to what I was talking about, you want to know what's funny about you guys? He's like, what? You guys have terrible skincare. And he reaches into his coat and pulls out this just UV grenade. And he's like, this was something Dr. Van Helsing came up with one time. We thought it'd be kind of cool to use it. So he just throws it on the ground, and he's like, Blade, cover your eyes. Throws it on the ground and just ignites it. And in the midst of it, Radu starts calling out to the gods of blood. And he's like, reawaken, rise, your grand priest needs you. And of course the blood gods do reawaken. And they're just all decrepit and whatnot, because they haven't been worshipped in a long time. They're feeble and weak. But they're like, we'll take your offering, and that offering is you. And they grab him and pull him back into this blood portal, and Radu is just sucked back in and left behind, while all the other vampires are just burning away and dying. Hellboy is just like, the boys of the BPRD would probably want to take a good look at this, and Blade's like, I bet they would. And he's pulling out a cigar, and he's like, shame though. And he's like, what shame? That the place crumbled after the blood gods show up. I had to use those it's a shame also I brought some explosives too. And of course, Blade and Hellboy just take Hellboy's explosives and proceed to blow the fucking place up. So Hellboy's like, like I said earlier, BPRD, we wanted you on our team, and it was you seem like a bit of an asshole, but an asshole I could work with. You want to come work for us? You can be my new partner. And Blade's like, nah, I appreciate it. I work alone. So Blade leaves, and Hellboy just radios in for pickup. So there you go, guys. That is the Blade-Hellboy crossover. Pretty straightforward, I know. But anyway, you guys tell me in the comments below, what did you guys think of this crossover? Just comment below, let me know. Once again, I'd like to thank Luke Morehouse for this Patreon request, as well as continued patronage. And other than that, I hope you all enjoyed this. I'm Mr. Multiverse. I'll see you next time in Multiverse.